You are listening to Let's Be Honest with your host, Just Johnda. Hello and welcome to Let's Be Honest with your host, Just Johnda. The sample that the show is live is that I almost misspoke just starting the show. Thank you for hanging with us tonight, those of you who are live, and those who are going to listen to this on replay. Thank you for joining us tonight again. So, Missy and I have looked at the past several shows when we came on to talk about one of our faves, The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And we decided that since we get into so much Bravo gossip that the show tends to run over, and then I have to go back to my editor and have him recut it, which is what we've had to do the last two times, that we would do two separate shows, especially given that there seems to be so much gossip coming out of the Bravo housewife universe practically every day. And I don't know if it's just the weather, people are happy to be out and about, or the fact that some shows are hitting their peak while other shows are at their finale. For instance, you've got the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills wrapping up with their long suffering reunion, right as the Real Housewives of Potomac are about to start their 4 episode long suffering reunion that probably could be more like 90 minutes and call it a day. And then in the midst of that, you have the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City finally hitting the point, which is, Missy and I predicted this episode too, that they were going to get to the point where they would probably get to the whole Jen Shah arrest situation and start exploring that end of the storyline right around the time that they hit mid-season. And this is, we just had episode 8. And so, of course, from what we saw in the previews, episode 9 will hit that. You also have Real Housewives of Atlanta news because they are finally starting to film. Real Housewives of Miami is slated to come back. That's been announced, even though that's going to be on Peacock. So there's a whole lot going on, which means that there are a lot of stories in the news, some real, some planted, but it all keeps people joining in. So we're just waiting for Missy to come on and get started because we've got a lot of gossip to cover. And then after we do this, immediately following this show, we are going to jump right in with the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which will be our next episode. We'll be talking about the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, episode 8. So lots of fun in store for you, those tonight who hang with us on the channel. Okay, Missy, you're here.
I'm here. Are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Of course, we've got to give you the welcome. So I was actually just telling everybody that you and I looked at it and just kind of giving a quick rundown of the fact that probably, and I know you and I will get into this more as we go through our discussion, for a number of reasons, there just seems to be Bravo stories coming out constantly. And we know some of it is planted to kind of keep people engaged, but there are new shows that are jumping off. You have some of the women who, even though they're not on the show, which we'll get to, they just won't leave the news. And then, of course, you've got these long suffering reunions, which, based on the way things are happening, are really going to go one right into the next. As soon as we're done with one set of reunions, we're going to be going right into another set. So there's lots of stories being planted. Also, once you get close to reunion time, that's also when the claws come out too. Not that the women aren't always going back and forth in social media, which to me spoils the show, but you have even more claws coming out because we know that in order to make sure that they are extra ready to be catty at the reunion, um, Bravo shows them whatever remaining episodes they haven't seen yet to make sure they get them good and fired up. And we've seen that because even with Potomac, there's been several cast members who if you look at social media, it seems towards the beginning of the season they were cool, and you assumed that the factions would be going in one direction. But by the time we got to the end of the season, they're not so cool anymore. And given that we know the footage was taped months and months ago, these changing factions have less to do with how they felt by the time the season was over and had some breathing room between whatever happened on the show and these scenes because we know they're set up scenes. But then when they saw how it was edited and played back, and of course their confessionals put in, it gets them all riled up just in time for the reunion, which ends up spilling over onto social media. And it never ceases to amaze me because they lived these moments in real time and they know that a lot of the stuff that they're seeing when they watch the episodes is spliced together by production because when you lived it in real time, you know it didn't happen that way. But I guess maybe it's just the nature of the type of people who do these, who go on these type of shows. They're not rational, so they're
And they have a lot of ego.
yes, they're exactly not rational, kind of crazy, a lot of ego. So even when they see the stuff spliced together, they know that it could be out of sequence to the point where the stuff that they're seeing, they know for a fact did not even happen chronologically in that order. And we know that that happens, and yet they still manage to get mad about it. And like I said, we see it play out on social media because the season will start and you'll see on social media or you'll see them out together and they're fine. And then by the time, even before the reunion, you start to see it change in terms of who's following who or they're going at it. They also get way too caught up with the fans, people they don't even know, and allowing that to factor in. But again, I say all this to say that lots of stuff is coming out because we've got reunion after reunion, which means that the women, due to Bravo, are getting all amped up and crazy, which then spills over into Housewives news, so to speak. What do you think about that, Missy?
I mean, I know for these reunion shows, usually I will half watch the season and then
Mm-hmm.
watch the reunion closely and then just fast forward past the scenes when they go over the scenes.
Yes.
I think that's why they're focusing more on the reunions
And
because I
stretching them out insufferably. There is no
yes.
reunion there. Well, I guess I'm putting the what comes first, the chicken or the egg. There is no show, at least right now in the current Bravo universe. Maybe years ago, seasons 4, 5, 6, Atlanta, those early seasons with the Manzos and the Giudices on Real Housewives of New Jersey. But other than those, literally other than those two, every other show on every other season, even at their best, none of them merited anything longer than 2 episodes, which could literally be a 2 hour special. These reunions are nothing but a money grab that stretches out, and the biggest in terms of really making that clear. Because when you've got Atlanta, even if the season is crap, they've got the reunion down to an art in terms of women knowing what it is. Even if it's fake as hell, they are such experts at this now because they've been at it for so long. They know how to make the reunion better than the entire season. So if they get 4 episodes, it's still 2 episodes too many, but you can work with it. None of the other shows, but none of the other women are that good. None of them. I
I would be
mean,
curious to know the pay structure. I mean, I know these women get paid per episode, but
well,
does
I
the
can tell you what they
reunion count
get
as
for the
one
reunion.
episode?
No, the reunion counts as 1 episode. So if you don't come to the reunion, you're probably obviously gonna piss off Andy, and it could obviously impact what happens moving forward with you and the show. But it's one money grab. I've heard about 100,000. That's really been and I really heard that. Well, I've heard it before, but recently it's been even more of a discussion, especially in light of what happened with the Real Housewives of New York reunion, because them not having it, also in addition to gypping the few fans that were willing to watch it. And I actually was willing to watch the reunion just for Ramona and Ebony K. Williams alone. And I didn't even watch the season. I kept up with it, but like you, I didn't watch it, but I would have watched that. So if I were some of the New York women, I would be pissed because not only did we not get a reunion, but you're costing me money. And
But they did it to themselves.
well,
They
actually, I heard more about it this week. Well, yes, they did it to themselves, but it's really also who's the network protecting, though. And that's what's messed up because the network protecting certain people cost other people who were willing to show up money.
right.
Because according to some tea that came out last week. Now, remember we talked about this rumor that at was it? I think it might have even been the book party, the party for the book that just came out, the one that's all the discussion,
Right.
that the several of the women, Ramona, Leah, although that to me is what makes it a little makes me a little skeptical because Leah's on some other ish, but I don't see her rolling with Ramona. She would roll by herself before she rolled with Ramona. But Ramona, Leah, and I think maybe Sonia Morgan, yeah, it wasn't Luann, that they left shortly after Ebony arrived because Ebony, she didn't come with she came a little bit later, had another engagement, etc. But at any rate, word on the street. Now, this is something new that I heard this week. Word on the curb is that there was some issues again that went on behind the scenes. Something else that Ramona allegedly said, and of course, if it has to do with Ramona, chances are it's true because we know her mouth is like diarrhea of the mouth but with racism. And so it was it was something that went down with Ramona. Oh my gosh, it's driving me crazy because I didn't write it down because as you know, when we did our show prep, it wasn't one of the topics that we had, but in getting into this whole discussion about reunions, it made me think of it. But at any rate, it had something to do with Ramona, and it really got to the point where Bravo was like, okay, there's no way that we're going to have a reunion. I guess she made one of yet another comment about the fact that she didn't that because of Ebony, the whole season ended up being about race. And there's more than one way that you can take that statement, obviously. um and so, but either way, it would not bode well to even for them to even flesh that out. And so that had so the bottom line is these women resistant, probably, I would say, based on some of the things that happened during the season, probably a Ramona, a Luann, because she definitely had her microaggression moments as well, that Bravo was just like, okay, screw it. And my thing is, even if you just show up and not say anything, I want that bag. You ain't gotta say a thing. If Ebony's gonna sit there and talk, and like their season, viewers didn't watch because people were in their feelings. So if that's the case, then let them have those couple more episodes that viewers may or may not watch. But I want my $100,000.
I'm surprised there's not a lawsuit over
I would
this.
not be surprised if, as things develop, that there won't be. And I don't even know if it'll be the Real Housewives of New York, but there's been so many issues, including one we're going to get into later when we touch base a little on some of the Potomac tea in anticipation of their reunion, that it's ripe for lawsuits, whether they win or not. Even some of the lawsuits that, you know, I give a little bit of side eye to, a little bit, not a lot, but just a little. Like some of the stuff with NeNe, some of the stuff with Mariah Huck, and I don't give them the side eye because I doubt that they feel that they legit feel the way they feel. Mariah more so because she pretty much got slid out of her show within the first two seasons, really. NeNe, I have less empathy for because as long as she was getting what she wanted and her ass was being kissed, she was fine. And then, Mariah has had, whether it's contractual or not, she has had a legit reason to be pissed. May or may not rise to the level of legal, but certainly just being pissed, more or less since season 3 of that show.
But
Because even when they brought her back, she was just as a friend. Now, again, you and I both being lawyers, I looking at the scenario and from what my understanding of what her deal was with Bravo, there may be some questions about where it goes legally, but at least her being upset and that being reasonable that she would be sitting home watching her show, I get that. NeNe a little less
but
so.
but part of it goes back to this whole, how much of a liability are you? Like, what are you adding? Are you
Well,
fighting
and
with
there you go.
everybody? Are you being physically threatening? Are
Or do
you
people want to film with you?
right?
Because
Right.
Andy has said it on more than one occasion. Sometimes housewives live or die, and those for those of you listening, I don't mean literally. I mean live or die in terms of seeing another day on the show, based on whether or not their co-stars are willing to film with them. Well, Mariah, again, this is not about whether you are team this or team that, because me and Missy go to the same school of being equal opportunity flamethrowers. So this, I mean, am I lying? Like,
Yeah, no, I'm team no friends.
yeah,
So,
we're
yeah.
we're we're throwing darts at everybody, and usually we put gasoline and fire on them. So, but we can have empathy when necessary. But these people are making way more money than us. To us talking about them. they don't care, so neither do we. At any rate, at any rate, I think with her, she more or less. I don't know. Did you watch the first couple of seasons of that? Because that's one I don't stick with now either.
I
Be-
did. I watched like maybe the first two seasons, but I felt like it was really just destructive. They were like getting private eyes on each
Oh
other
yeah.
and
Okay. So the seasons that you watched were pretty much led to her departure. Remember, by the end of season two, they basically had a meeting among the cast and basically voted her off the island. Like it was an episode of Survivor.
but she deserved it.
I
She deserved it.
Oh no, and I'm not saying that she didn't, but I'm just saying that if Andy holds true to that statement he made, she is a living, breathing example of it. And in her case, it was even more ugly because of her position as it relates to the show, because she literally brought this show to them, which is why she got the EP credit. Now, again, we know that some of those credits may be vanity credits. I've produced things as well, so I certainly know the difference. But and that is part of what is probably hurting her as well, because a lot of times people will take that vanity credit in exchange for ownership, which it looks like she probably did. But because it will hard it's hard to believe you would be still have ownership and not be on your own show, whereas with NeNe, while NeNe did bring the idea of an Atlanta version of Housewives to Bravo, she did not bring the Housewives, idea to Bravo. Just the idea of saying, hey, could we get a black version out of Atlanta? I think it would be hot. And of course it was. Mariah, on the other hand, uh, legit came up with the idea of her show. And so to be sitting at home being voted off the island, yeah, I could see where that would pitch you off. But again, uh given the number of years that have gone by since that has happened, and the fact that there has been no legal recourse that has taken place, I am a bit skeptical as to whether or not she has any, even if the rumors are true about her bringing suit after all this time.
And the thing that I find very interesting about that show is that the focus has shifted to the doctors rather than the wives of the doctors. I don't know if you remember in the beginning,
Well,
it
remember,
was
it had a piece. It was, but it was always a dual element show, though, because remember, Jackie and Simone are OGs on that show. So there was always the shift. There was always the two pieces. I think what the question is when they say married to medicine, are they giving us, like you said, married to medicine as in you are the wife of a doctor, or is it more of a double entendre of where you are either married to a doctor like Mariah, Lisa Nicole, and if we talk about the OGs, or and not even or, because there's always been an and you are married to medicine as in you are also a successful doctor who has a family but married to your career, because we've certainly seen, Heavenly is the exception to that, because I really don't know what it is that her focus is, but it's certainly with Simone and Dr. Jackie. From day one we have seen that they are both married women with not only medical careers, but thriving medical careers that seem to, in both instances, pull them away from family life. Remember, Simone in season one literally moved into a different place to be closer to her practice. And then with Jackie, her husband has always complained, but I think there's another set of competing elements there. He's older than her and retired, and he's been older than her and retired the entire time she's been on the show.
But I think now there's only one wife, and everybody else on there is a doctor. At least I think the last time I
Um,
saw it.
there is, yeah, I think there is. Yeah, I think so. Because they brought last season, they brought back two of the OGs, but they brought them back as friends, and both of them are married to doctors. Although Lisa Nicole had like a whole lab core thing going on, but still technically not a doctor. And that's why I said it may be more of a double entendre in terms of the doctors. I think what has always troubled me about that show is that I think that that show had the most potential for showing professional women, and in this case, especially given that it is based out of Atlanta, showing these African American or women of color professional women in a far better light than the Real Housewives of Atlanta, because while they may be using that platform to push maybe some of their pet projects, they all the ones who were doctors were legit doctors, and I had hoped that that would step up some of the behaviors out of the proverbial gutter, and it really hasn't. And that's been other than Dr. Jackie. And the thing that is really amazing to me is that in um, her wish to try to maintain a certain level of dignity and respect as compared to her coworkers, a lot of people in the fan base hate on her and say, "Oh, she thinks she's better than people," and that whole thing. And I'm like, call it what you want. I call it somebody trying to, maintain their professionalism and professional and personal, but most importantly, their professionalism, and recognize the fact that after this show goes away, I still want to have the respect and the ability to walk into spaces that I worked hard and paid a gazillion dollars in schooling to do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's easy to lose your credibility on these shows.
I swear. I mean, when I watched Dr. Heavenly on not just on the show, but her YouTube channel, my God, I mean, 15 minutes of one episode, and she may be, for all I know, the best dentist in the universe. I would never go, because I half the time I wonder if she's got it all together and hasn't had some Jesus juice in her coffee cup. And remember, they have certainly alluded to that multiple times on the show. Well, I tell you what, watch one of her YouTubes.
No, I'd rather not.
Exactly. It is like the show on 1000. And then same thing, Dr. Simone. I know that she is respected and I'm sure is an amazing doctor, but all the yelling and screaming and the irrational behavior on the show, I, that makes a difference. Not everybody should go on television and do everything if you want to live another day doing what you do outside of that. Now,
But the
again,
money, the
fair
money
enough.
attracts people though. That's the
Well,
thing.
yeah,
The
and on
money
top
pulls
of
people
that,
in.
yes, and we also know they are in the ATL, and Atlanta feels that they are Little Hollywood, Hollywood South, where everything is entertainment adjacent or something to floss about. So these types of things don't necessarily bother them. That type of thing would not work everywhere. So, but anyway, another thing that wasn't on our agenda. See, this is why we had to do a separate gossip show. So let's get into this week's stuff because some of these reunions and stuff are going to come up during the course of our discussion. Speaking of a reunion that, again, I just call them at this point. We're just going to say LSR, long suffering reunions. One that is finally concluding this week, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and I mean, this reunion, this show is season has taken so long, and the reunion has taken so long that they are literally already filming and have been for a couple of weeks for the next season. Well, last week it came out that on about Wednesday. So what was that? Let's see, October 27th, on thereabouts. Dorit Kemsley reports that she was burgled, or her home was burgled. She said that she was sleeping and sometime during the night she woke up. Allegedly, PK was in London, and I say allegedly not to be deliberately shady, but because there's been like two different reports of where he was. But at any rate, he was not in the room with her. We know that much. So she says that she woke up and there were burglars, and they were already in her bedroom, and she immediately, as any, I would hope any mother began immediately to plead not to hurt her children. Like, do whatever you want, take whatever you want, don't hurt my children. And she says that one of the people said to the other, a killer, and that didn't happen, obviously, because she's telling the story. And ultimately, they just made off with all of her jewelry and purses, which I want to see the report on that, because like no electronics, no cash, no, well, maybe they watched the show, and we know that people out there do, because remember the bling ring of several years ago. But at any rate, she said jewelry and purses, so that is the current stuff. And I also saw a report today, which I didn't doubt, that is going to play on, that is going to be a part of her storyline on the upcoming season, which for her probably saved her from being demoted to friend, because it's not like she brought much to the show this past season.
But
um,
she tried to start fights with like every single person.
yeah, she did. And I mean, and PK is her Peter Thomas. Like Peter Thomas was to Cynthia in terms of being the part of that pair that kind of helped to keep some stuff going, to keep her on the show. PK is that person for her, because I mean
Okay.
the episode with PK and Mauricio making fun of the Erica Jane thing, they
Yeah.
could have made two episodes just those two sitting at the table and drinking, because I bet the uncut of that is like gold,
Yeah, yeah.
especially
And
once they got a couple of more drinks in them, because you figure this is two people in their own home, and then we know Mauricio likes his weed too, so I'm sure that was just a shade fest to end all shade fest. But as much as we may hate it as viewers, and also when they kind of mean girl some of the other castmates, the one thing that I will give the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is, even some of the ones who don't like each other, if they decide that you are fully a part of their, circle of, you are really in with this show, even if we are at odds with some of our, some of the things our characters do during the season, they protect one another. Because we know for sure Erica, Dorit, well, Erica's in an island of her own, but Kyle, Lisa, and Dorit do, and they've clearly circled the wagons around Erica.
well, that's why the whole thing about Erica being offended by people consulting attorneys
Oh, please.
was
She's ridiculous.
so weird to me because in past seasons, like Bravo is so funny. They air randomly like these old episodes,
Hmm.
and they were like flying on her plane. She
Hmm.
was gifting them with things.
I
Um,
mean, why wouldn't women of a certain caliber consult their attorneys, especially when you are dealing with this person, you work with this person, and you don't work a normal job. You work a job where you all are or pretend to be friends, close friends who are in each other's homes and travel together and what have you. And most
right,
people, and the assumption that, let's face it, the assumption that most of us make, and is often true, about rich people or people of a certain level, especially if they're close, is that they often do business together, and they do. We know that. We know people with less money who do business together. And people who want to look out for each other and make sure that, like, if I'm doing well, you're doing well. I mean, you and I both know, like, in our regular day jobs, that people refer their friends and neighbors and family members to us
right.
all the time. And then if we don't do that type of law or can't take the case, then we pass it on. But that's what people do. And we also know, as even we're seeing a side note, an example of this, even with Theranos, why did all those people invest a FOMO? All their rich friends were investing, so they did.
Right. But it's also that there was a lot of gift giving, or there
Oh,
used to be
absolutely.
a lot of gift giving. So,
Remember
like,
when Sutton came on the scene? Didn't the first thing she did was give them gifts? Remember? I forget what she gave them, but she did.
yes, yeah. And so, if you are Erica Jane and you're caught up in all of that, and you gave me a gift worth tens of thousands of dollars,
Exactly. And
I
and
would
let's and
talk to a
we
lawyer.
know that if it's jewelry, that it may or may not be, depending on what you're into, it may or may not be insured. Either you insured it or I insured it. But if you insured it, that means that it ties back to you and the fact that you bought it, which means that, I need to consult my attorney about this bracelet you gave me. Because, I mean, do I just need to go ahead and hand that over to the bankruptcy trustee when
Right,
they season all the rest of her shit? Because what I
right.
don't want is to be on the receiving end of a subpoena when I could just quietly hand this crap over to my lawyer and tell him to slide that over to the bankruptcy trustee and keep me out of it.
Exactly,
That's the kind of
exactly,
chick I am. Okay.
exactly.
And I knew that's what you were thinking. Absolutely. And come on. She's married to an attorney. So she knows that people contact their attorneys. She has been on the phone constantly with her attorneys, and so has her husband. These lawsuits with Tom, although the big blow up is, like, of course, new and really brought on the show. But remember, there has been some lawsuits that they kind of quietly just swept under the rug practically the whole time that she's been on the show. Certainly in the last two seasons before this one.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad situation. I just don't think that the reunion was worth 4 episodes. It's
Oh
like
no.
Andy
And she
goes off
didn't
on a
answer
whole
most of
nother
the
topic.
questions. Yeah.
He goes off on a whole nother topic and then he comes right back to her.
And we know that she's not going to answer many questions. And in fairness, again, just invoking our expertise in this, as much as I hate to do it, but again, we're no friend zone, and except to each other. In in fairness, to Erica, she shouldn't be talking. She
No,
shouldn't be
she
talking.
shouldn't.
The
She
fact
shouldn't
that
be.
she is on this show, in fact, any of these Bravo people, I mean, we could literally go down the list, because it's not just her and Jen Shah. It's her, Jen Shah, Teresa Giudice, Dorit. It's a bunch of them. And and none of them should be on the show. It goes back to the crazy we were talking about earlier. Yes, they want the money, but there's other stuff behind it too, because there's other ways that if you weren't on this show, you could be trying to hustle some money, and it wouldn't be as noticeable that you're trying to do that, but for you still being on the show, so everybody's watching you.
Right, right.
Like when Erica Jane tried to go on that high end website and sell her clothes after the bankruptcy trustee had already
I
told them to
mean,
hold on to their stuff. Like, so you don't have somebody else you can have do that for you. So it also just goes to them not being so bright either. But there's a certain level of privilege involved in all of this as well, right? Like, so you just thought you were gonna go on Twitter and announce your sale and nobody was going to notice? Okay.
I I mean, it's so funny because my husband, um, he walked by and he saw the reunion and he saw her in the reunion and he says, "Is that the same woman who was on the show?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, she looks so different." And I'm like, "She doesn't have the same fillers, the same hairstylist, the
It
same
definitely
makeup."
no tan. My God, her and that dress were practically the same color.
Yeah, I'm like, that was a lot of money that went into creating her,
Hmm.
and she doesn't have the same access at this point.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it real. Even if she does, maybe the one piece of advice she's taking from her lawyer is not to show it.
Yeah, but that dress was really bad.
Oh no, that dress
Like,
was really bad. I mean, but let's face it, across the board, they must have thought that it was like ugly dress day. I mean, they looked like what people look like when they go to an ugly sweater party at Christmas time
because
with their reunion fashion.
I don't understand what Kyle thought she was doing with
I
that.
heard that dress, her whole look, the dress. First of all, the black pantyhose were a nightmare, and they just highlighted the legs. But then again, if she didn't wear pantyhose and we saw those white legs, I mean that just would have been a mess. But uh, even her daughters probably would have said, "Mom, that's ugly," which tells me that there was some stylist that committed that assault on her, that fashion assault, and nobody else was around to tell her, "No, no, uh-uh." I mean, the crazy thing is, all of them collectively. I mean, Kathy Hilton just does the, rich woman balloon dresses, but, with just lots of fabric and the patterns and whatever. So it's just like, who cares? But the rest of them, all of them, and even Rinna with her eclectic sense of whatever, have all dressed better just going to brunch on the show.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean,
you're
not just
right.
once or twice, regularly. They are by far the best dressed cast when they are going places and doing things. And even if you don't necessarily like the specific style, if nothing else, you can look at the tailoring, you can look at the fit, and you can look at the materials and tell it was expensive as hell.
Well, that reunion was a hot mess. They
No,
all
it,
looked
it looked like
horrible.
they went to the Deb shop.
Yeah.
And Garcelle Lover, but she went to the mother of the bride section of the dev shop.
Yeah, that's exactly what that dress
Mhm.
was.
So our next story, and we're gonna make this short and sweet because it just annoyed the hell out of me. So NeNe Leakes was on V104, I believe it was in Atlanta, one of the morning shows, and probably promoting her um bar, whatever, and trying, keeping her name out there. So she was asked up by um, the commenters, the DJs, about who was there for her among the housewives and whatever, like more or less about Greg's funeral. Well, the repast, because from what I understand, it looks like they had a private funeral. So the big thing was the big repast party she had at her club for him. And they talked about like who was there. What they really wanted to know was like the housewives, whether it was just her Atlanta cast or the Bravo universe. So she did something that I think was rather tacky. Some people want to give her grace because she's grieving. Nope, not doing it. Um, she said that all the cast members chipped in and gave her a $200 flower arrangement, and I guess, signed it from the cast. And she went on to talk about how they all make a lot of money and this and that and the third. Now, this is my take before I get to Cynthia on that. Most people, most don't even do that. You get a card. We no longer work with you, and most of our contact with you, other than us being adult enough to reach out to you because we genuinely loved your husband, reached out or made public statements. But let's be clear, he's not here and we don't like you. But we are going to do a flower arrangement. And I'm going to take it a step further, Miss Leakes, just in case you were not upset enough about it. They probably didn't chip in on the flower arrangement. If they're anything like me and my friends, one of us brought the flower arrangement and just told everybody else we did it. And would you like me to sign your card? So since you're concerned about the fact that they were too cheap to get you bigger gifts or a donation to cancer research or something, they probably didn't even do that, because real grown women of a certain age and at least a modicum of class don't take up a collection among their friends. One person will just buy it and put everybody else's name on it. And then she went further and said Cynthia wasn't there, and she didn't have contact with her, whatever, till Cynthia, but she came a week later, but she wasn't at the repast. And people were tripping about that. Cynthia lives on the other side of the country, and I'm sorry, she doesn't have to plan her life around the loss in yours. Again, especially since you've made it clear that we are not what we used to be. Also, as I said to you when we were doing show prep, as Cynthia said when TMZ got in her face with a microphone the next day, looking gorgeous, she said, I came the following week when I could actually spend time with her, because I wouldn't have gotten to spend any quality time with her if I came when everybody else was there. And they were like, so what was going on during that time? She was like, I was in LA, where I live, doing what I do. I mean, it just is
Minding
what
my
it is,
business.
minding my business. And we know that she came out and made a statement just like everybody else when Greg initially died. And sadly, we live in a world where people can't just offer quiet condolences and private condolences. They have to do it publicly, because otherwise, there's no proof to their stupid, voracious fans, especially the ones of the Real Housewives of Atlanta and Potomac, who are insane. They're like the Barb's versus the Navy versus the Bayhive. Um, you have they have people have to actually make a public proclamation when they simply say, I am really sorry about your loss. But I'm going to kick it to you, because as someone who has had losses in my life, and I know you have too, and recognize how grown people handle these things, this story really annoyed the hell out of me. And not because of the people that chipped in on cards or a flower, and I'm sorry, and Cynthia coming the other week. It is the fact that she actually talked about it.
I mean, to me, if I lost my husband, I would not be checking and sizing up the flowers for the cost. I mean, all of this just shows what a sad person Lenithia really is. And it's really unfortunate. I think, you know, she's in a position now where she doesn't have the show and she doesn't have her partner. And I don't know what the future holds for her. I mean, I hope that, you know, she will move on and grow from this, but it seems pretty bleak. I mean, my prayers are with her. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's where she's at in the midst of all of this loss,
Hmm.
she's in a really bad place
Yeah.
right
And
now.
you don't get a sympathy pass from me when you're petty.
No, no,
And
no. But the fact that you're
and I'm
that
known to,
petty,
and I don't mind petty in perspective, but but
but
in this,
you and I have both dealt with grief. And
yes.
so when you are really going through it, to be distracted by things like that
Hmm.
means you're not going through the process.
Yeah. And I feel for her in the loss, but when you use that as yet another opportunity to come for people, I can't mess with you.
I completely
So
agree.
next, now this is big news. It's been something that's been batted around for a long time, but finally, Andy Cohen announced today, I think on the Today Show, that the Real Housewives of Dubai is coming in 2022. It sounds like this is something that they are probably in the process, if not have already cast, even though um, even though they're not admitting to it. And the information that I've pulled, um, it, the some of these names sound mighty specific for them not to at least be in talks. And given the nature of how this works with the filming versus the editing and then getting it to air, for them to already be talking about 2022, this casting is either done or nearly done so that they can start getting to filming, because we're already in November. So even if they start filming in January, they would literally have to be filming in January, because a case in point is the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. They started filming in January. They wrapped up around May, and then of course the show is airing now, and we're in week 8. So because they started airing in September. So I think that's probably what we're going to be looking at. What we're going to be looking at with them. I would imagine that they're going to be coming in around the same time as the next year, as the next round of that whole like Potomac slash Salt Lake City, and then we'll probably get Dubai either coming like in the midst of that or before it. I don't think, especially given if they're going to put on Bravo, because of course we know that they've been trying to do some stuff for Peacock. I personally think that this is too big of this is potentially too big of a show, not to mention the expense of making it, for them to waste it on Peacock. I think they're rushing to do it because they want to make sure that they don't make the mistake they did with the first season of Salt Lake City, putting it behind a dud like OC. There's going to be a substantial investment made in this. They're going to put it behind one of their hit shows. What do you think?
I am so excited. I went to
Hmm.
Dubai a couple of years ago, and even if the women are boring, the atmosphere surely won't be boring.
And
Um,
the money.
yeah, there's lots of opulence.
And
I
we get an unabashed, not shy about the opulence. We get back to what this show is supposed to be about. Like I said on the F and DD today, Rich heifers doing rich heifer shit.
Even just walking through the Dubai Mall, I
Yes.
mean, I'm not a mall person, but even walking through there,
Yeah,
I
but
have
you're
to
like, I'm
say,
going to that one.
my mind was blown
Oh yeah.
completely. It was like a consumerism, American consumerism on steroids.
Yeah.
Like it was
On
ridiculous.
steroids plus some crack and some cocaine as a chaser.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. And then that is definitely a party city. So I'm
Hmm.
sure they will be like partying, and it'll be neat to be introduced to things that are inaccessible to me, because some of these things that I see on these housewives shows, I'm like,
Which is
because
not,
you know,
again, I know that people love the drama, but that was not what it was supposed to be about. You and I, as TV connoisseurs, which is why we love doing this, we know that when the Housewives came, it was supposed to be a modern day version of the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but with a different twist based on housewives. Because remember, we went from the lifestyles of the rich and famous to Joan Rivers doing the millionaires next door. And then remember, in like the early 20s, right before the Housewives, you had several of those shows about these women, which is what, and which is where the Housewives interest came from, about these women who would throw these over the top extravagant parties for their
right,
kids. And
right,
so, of course, that pique the interest. Like, wait a minute, let's take a peek behind the curtain to what is going on at home with these women who would have the means to live large as, as housewives, because they plan these extravagant parties, they ain't had shit else to do. So
So look, I am not rich. I am not famous. I do not live a life of luxury. But when I'm watching these shows and I'm seeing them wearing some of the
the
same clothing
same
that
stuff
I
that you can
wear
get.
and going
Oh
to the
yeah.
same places that I would go, I feel a
uh
certain way about it.
Especially, oh yeah, especially Atlanta, Potomac, and of course you and I live in the DMV, so we're both looking at Potomac like, and what?
Exactly,
Okay, so
exactly, exactly.
I mean, give me something. I mean, uh Portia halfway tried when she had the purple Birkin bag, but as we know, so, that was given to her allegedly by some Africans. So she, you still ain't coming with with nothing.
At all, at
Like,
all.
no. So, and the exciting thing is, I actually checked the people who have been discussed, and I've checked two sources for this. I looked them all up because you know how we do. So the first main person, and if they choose her, I like it. You and I talked about this during prep. I like it. I also get it, even though some people may be like, eh. But anyway, Caroline Stanberry. Now, Caroline Stanberry, for those of us TV files, and especially people like me and you who will watch TV from all over the world, was from the show Ladies of London, which had 3 seasons on Bravo. At the end of that was a 2014 show. At the end of 2016, she left the show, and she was part of the nucleus of the show. She left the show and moved to Dubai with her husband because she said that would be easier with travel. Well, one thing that I didn't know when you and I have talked, which would to me makes this even more interesting for if they choose her, her and Homie are divorced.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
now we get the possibility of her. I don't know if she's still living there, although people I know who went to Dubai, like, they were good with staying. But if she has chosen to stay there, or of course, she has money, she can certainly do it for the sake of the show, just like she did when she was on Ladies of London. Um, that adds an interesting twist because we will get to see potentially her dating or whatever else she's doing now, and working. And I know that yes, there would be some concern about, okay, we finally get a show in Dubai. And I get it. We finally get a show in Dubai, and it's the big name, at least for American audiences, is a white woman. But the reality of it is that even though it's the Real Housewives of Dubai, it is an American show. And so, from a producer standpoint, if they have somebody that they know and that knows how this whole game works in terms of making reality TV, and it is someone that at least a segment of the Bravo audience is familiar with, that's a win-win for them. So, white or not, I can't be mad at that. For
I
the
mean,
producers, it makes sense.
here's the thing about Dubai is it's an amazing country. It's very modern. When you
Hmm.
go there as a tourist, no one messes with you, but it is still a very traditional place. So for
Yeah, so
instance,
none of these people would be from, and all of these people I'm going to name, several of them are Middle Eastern, but they are not natives of Dubai. Because, yes, Dubai is
exactly.
absolutely traditional, because there is going to be, I'm sure, there's going to have to be some massaging done at Bravo, even based on some of the feedback I saw today, because as on the flip side, the UAE, for all of its modernness in terms of the money and the opulence and all of that good stuff, like you said, when you were trying to get an Uber, one of the offerings was a helicopter. Uh,
Right.
but even with all of that, from a human rights standpoint, especially when it comes to our friends in the LGBTQ plus community, uh, like many places in the Middle East, they're crap.
And like the leader's daughter had to like run away. Like she had to sneak
Okay,
away to
all
be
right, do we
free.
still know what that girl is? I mean, I'm just saying.
It's so I don't see a lot of people who are from there who would
No.
be part of that
Oh, hell
off
no.
part of the population being
Even
like,
when they party and whatever, I would venture to say that there's going to be a lot of massaging that production is going to be doing with them, in terms of even like, it's so funny because everything is so opulent, right? They've got the American fashion and they've got all of this, but as you and I know, they are also like extremely strict when it comes to drinking. Even
let me tell you how strict they are when it comes to drinking. The best
you have
advice
to
I
have a
got,
license. If you
yeah,
live there, you have to have a license.
the best advice that I got is if you want to have a drink in your room or whatever, make sure you go through the duty free because you
Right
there's
at
no
the
liquor
airport.
store. There's no liquor store. You
Nope.
can go to bars and restaurants and you can
Hmm.
drink and they'll have like bottomless brunches and things like that. But if you just want to have a drink in your room or grab a beer or something, that's not
Yeah,
happening.
you better
There's no
bring that
liquor
with you
store.
from the airport.
Right, exactly, exactly. It's that strict.
And even with the hotels, there are issues about women, people of opposite sexes going to hotel rooms who are not married. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
So, all right. So we have Caroline Stansberry, but some of these people are really interesting. And really, the interesting thing is, maybe everybody here don't know them, but worldwide famous. So even a couple of these people would be good gets just based on their IG. The next one is Huda Katan, maybe Katan, who is a former Miss World Australia. She also is known as uh, Hoodie Booty or Hootie Booty. She has 2.3 million followers on her personal Instagram, but she is the founder of Huda Beauty. I went to the Huda Beauty page. 49.5 million followers just on IG alone. And by the
Wow.
way, all of these women are like devastatingly gorgeous. Okay, next, Jessica Kahawati. She's a model, humanitarian law grad, 1 million IG followers, and she is founder of Mama Rita. Nadine Nasib Najim. She is also an actor, former Miss Lebanon 2004, 14 million IG followers. Nadia Zaal, real estate developer. I didn't even realize I had been following her just because of the developments that she puts up. She may not, she doesn't have as many followers as them because she's actually a legit businesswoman. I mean, she has a couple 100,000, but she's a legit businesswoman. And I mean, the properties that she shows on her page, if she's selling even half of them, she got she got the kind of money they make music about.
Okay.
Karen Wazin, she is a TikTok sensation. She's also Middle Eastern. She started her own eyewear line. She looks like she'd be the baby of the group. 6.8 million followers just on Instagram. So if she is known for her TikTok, then obviously she probably has hundred millions more there. So whether they get some of these women or all of them, that would be a pretty powerhouse cast because maybe we don't know them, but the demographic that Bravo has been trying to shift to for a minute in terms of the younger end of that 18 to 42 money demographic is would definitely it would be perfect for this. And all of these women, even just based on their followings, the things that they show, none of them are afraid to show their fashion, their beauty, and their wealth. All of them look like they just walked out of fashion magazines.
I can't wait.
So yeah, so that's really exciting. So the final thing that I have for us is the and this is just, quick throwaway. This is we know that we last night got the Real Housewives of Potomac final episode. So what they are playing up now is the reunion again. LSR, long suffering reunion, 4 episodes. This is definitely one where literally I would only give them 2.5 only because they're having a special guest. And I already know just because of my usual feelings when Nicki Minaj, when I have to listen to her voice too much, that's still going to be 15, 20 minutes too long because just the sound of her voice is like fingernails on a blackboard to me. And then on top of it, the fact that you have, as in this cast, let's say I'm a cast member, I have given you hundreds of hours of my life for 4 to 6 months for you to edit down and, you know, help me to look like a fool and, get it down to however many episodes they had, maybe, I think maybe about 16. And and then our reunion ends up being dwarfed by the fact that we have a guest star at the end whose fan base doesn't even fall into our primary demographic unless of course we're fighting, and not everybody fighting, just the two youngest people fighting. So
or you got Nicki Minaj cheap because she's married to a predator.
hmm. Exactly. So even when she said that she wanted to do it, and then Andy was like, remember that whole little internet campaign she went on, and
Yeah,
then all the women were acting like they were excited. I was like, y'all some thirsty heifers because she doesn't
very.
even her fan base doesn't fit what you need. And even if they watch the reunion, I'm sure it's definitely going to be a ratings, probably one of the highest ratings they've had, the way they've talked it up. All of the so-called leaks that you and I know are not really leaks about what she supposedly said to who and who she supposedly got together. We know all that is BS. We know all of that is deliberately done. Even all of that is geared towards getting making keeping her fans hype and having her fans hope that she'll pop up at some point before the last episode, but it's already been made clear that they did not bring her in until the very end of taping. So even on that last episode, I don't think she's gonna get the whole episode. If she does, you're just gonna have to tell me about it because I won't be able to. I don't care who she supposedly gets together. I won't be able to do it. And even if she does, it's totally performative anyway.
And
So, I
she's
mean,
not and she's not that witty or funny. Now, if it was Cardi B,
oh
that
my
would
God,
probably be
I would
way
be on the
better.
floor. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because, all you need is Cardi B to say to Candace's husband, come on now, you don't pay your rent. I had no idea that my daughter was walking around saying that, and had never even seen Love and Hip Hop. She didn't even know that came from Love and Hip Hop. But she shut it down when she said that to Peter Guns at the reunion. She's like, "Come on, Peter, you don't pay the rent."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she had a lot of zingers there. Like she would be great for a Real Housewives reunion. She
Even
would be
and again,
awesome.
even and in fairness to Nikki, Cardi's fans don't meet the demographic either. But if we're gonna do stunt casting, let's at least make it entertaining. And then they did all this pink, which makes me think about um what is it? Steel Magnolias when Olympia Dukakis said the church looked
Oh
like Pepto
yeah.
Bismol threw up in the building. Between the set and the clothes, it's like bad to worse.
Yeah.
Um, Karen looked like she looked so amazing on Watch What Happens last week. That's what she should have wore to the reunion. I don't even care that it was a black jumpsuit. The makeup, the jumpsuit, the hair looked amazing. It was soft, it was full. It was clear that someone in New York from Watch What Happens did her as opposed to somebody in DC who did her as if she was going to do a drag brunch. So,
Yeah, all the makeup is on that show. All, I mean,
it's
I want
always
to
bad.
say
You know
DC
it's
and Salt Lake have the worst. Have the worst.
it's
DC and
bad
Salt Lake.
when the best makeup is Giselle and Ashley.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and the
it's
best
really
hair was
bad.
Giselle and Ashley, which is definitely well. Ashley's hair is natural, but it's still they did a great job with it. Giselle, this was literally the first reunion I have ever liked her hair. Whether it's just pieces, a wig, or whatever, stick with whoever did this.
And
Um,
Candace, they have her looking like a tin man with all that highlighter on her face.
yes, and then the wig, it literally was Jada Pinkett from The Nutty Professor.
Yeah.
Um, So the things that stand out to me, and now one from last night is Ray. Ray shade reminds me of my grandfather because he had shade, and I loved it. When Ray said to Michael Darby, "I was surprised that the kids were this attractive."
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That made me think of my grandmother Helen, who, if she meets your baby and she tells you that you have a nice baby, when there is no way of her knowing that child's personality, it means your baby's ugly. We have established that over many years and finally forced her to admit it. It means that she thinks your baby looks bad. And so instead of saying, "Oh, that's a pretty baby," she just goes, "That's a nice baby." And she's done it several times. And the kids were different. Now, I'm not going to say that Gollum's children are unattractive because I have two kids and they're cute and I want good looking grandchildren. So I am not going to put bad juju in the atmosphere by talking bad about those children. But Ray did. And I'm just gonna leave it like that because that tells me that Ray and Karen been home talking about those kids.
Yeah, yeah. And when Robin asked him if he's ever mistaken for their grandfather, that was
I mean,
also
of
pretty
course he's
funny.
mistaken for their grandfather, and let's face it, at his age, he literally could be their great grandfather because
Yeah,
we're talking about, and I'm not being ageist. I'm being like just doing the math. He is well in his 60s. He's probably honestly. I would bet that despite the shade that Ashley throws at Ray and G. First of all, G is younger than Michael. Not only does he
right.
look younger than Michael, we know that G is younger than Michael. Secondly, if anything, Michael is probably closer to Ray's age. And in truth, because brothers, if they lived well, age even better than they do normally. Ray actually looks good. What gives Ray's age away is the fact that he moves slow. Ray has
Yeah,
some
yeah.
obvious mobility issues, but like in the face and whatever, I mean, Ray to me looks like Peter Thomas's older brother.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean Ray's mobility, and he's got that kind of gruff old man voice. But the only thing that gives Ray away is his mobility because it damn sure isn't in his face.
Well, when they were going down the steps last night, that was a little
Yeah.
scary.
Well, exactly. But Michael Darby, he looks like Gollum for a reason because Gollum is old and creepy. So, and the only other thing, because if we can come back to some of this next week because we're going to wrap up and go into Salt Lake City, because I definitely so put a pin in this for next week's gossip chat, that we need to have a talk about the I'm depending on you about Michael Darby, Chris Bassett, Andy Cohen, and the whole white privilege of it all.
Oh, sure.
We definitely need to talk about that, and I can't imagine that the reunion isn't going to give us some reasons to talk about that. And then you might want to put a hashtag colorism there too, because that's always ever present on this show. I
Yeah.
mean, this show, made it look like you had to pass the paper bag test to be on it from season one. Because remember, season one, we started with all light skins except for Sharice. And
And
really, if it
remember they
wasn't
had
for
that
the fact,
little
go
table
ahead.
talk. Remember they had that little table talk that
I
first season?
absolutely remember with
Yeah.
Giselle, Robin, and Katie, and Giselle and Robin had the nerve to try to make Katie feel some kind of way. I absolutely remember that. And it's
Yeah.
just like, you might act like you all down, but there's a whole lot that goes on with you and definitely in your life that has to do with how you look, and not just how you look pretty, because you can find many a pretty girl, especially on a college campus or even just walking down the street. It's pretty and light.
Right. Right.
Okay, so let's be clear. So, yeah, so we're going to definitely talk about that because, again, the reunion of this show begets many issues, and that one is ever present. And the fact that it literally came up, and then you had a white man, husband or not, kind of try to tamp that down. You know what? We're going to leave it alone because it goes too deep. And the other thing about the reunion, we'll just deal with when they get to it. So that is all we have this week. And this is why we had to do a separate gossip show, because there was so much. So everybody, hopefully you will hang with us for the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I've got to take some oxtails out the oven. So that was probably a bit too personal. So so we'll be back in about 5 minutes to jump right into that show. And then for the replay gang that are listening to this on the channel or whatever podcast station you listen to, of course, you can just click on the next episode at any time. But I hope you'll do it now to make sure that you download it and stay with us. But if you only tuned in for the gossip, make sure that you follow me on all social media platforms. Everything you need is right there in the information section. But just in case you need me to remind you, I'm at Let's Be Honest on Twitter and Let's Be Honest JJ on Twitter and Instagram. That's LETSBEHONESTJJ for Just Johnda. And remember, if you're thinking about it, clicking about it, linking about it, or want to talk about it, chances are I want to talk about it with you. So let's be honest together. Bye bye. See you in a few minutes, Melissa.
Bye. Okay.
Okay, I got to give you some applause again because, we love our sound effects here. So, everybody, stay tuned.